My brother put our mother in a nursing home while I was away. Then she asked for the locked suitcase. Rebecca Hale was 48 years old when she learned that a family could betray you without raising its voice. No one screamed at her, no one slammed a door, no one told her she was no longer welcome. Instead, her brother sent a text message while she was standing in an airport in Denver, waiting for a delayed flight home. "Mom is settled, don't panic, call me when you land." Rebecca stared at the message for several seconds. Settled where? She typed the words and sent them. Her brother Daniel did not answer. She called him. Voicemail. She called again. Then she called her mother. No answer. The airport announcement overhead said something about thunderstorms and gate changes, but Rebecca barely heard it. Her stomach tightened with the particular fear that belongs to adult children of aging parents. The fear that every unanswered phone might mean a fall, a stroke, a hospital corridor, or a sentence beginning with, "I'm sorry to tell you." She called Daniel a third time. This time he answered. "Rebecca, where is Mom?" There was a pause. "At Green Meadow." Rebecca frowned. "What is Green Meadow?" Another pause. "A senior care center." The airport seemed to disappear around her. "Hey, what?" "Before you start yelling. You put Mom in a nursing home. It is assisted living with memory support. You put Mom in a facility while I was out of town." "Rebecca, listen to me." "No, you listened to me. I left 5 days ago. 5, Mom was in her house when I left." She fell. Rebecca stopped. "What?" "Tuesday night in the kitchen." "Why didn't anyone call me?" "She was okay." "If she was okay, why is she in a nursing home?" "Because the fall proved what I have been saying for a year." Rebecca closed her eyes. There it was. The argument they had been having for months. Their mother, Margaret Hale, was 79. She had lived alone since their father, Frank, died 9 years earlier. She still cooked, gardened, drove short distances, went to church, and volunteered twice a week at the library. But over the previous year, she had become forgetful. Not dramatically. Not at first. She misplaced keys, paid the electricity bill twice, forgot one of Rebecca's appointments, and then laughed about it. Once she put milk in the pantry and cereal in the refrigerator. Rebecca noticed. So did Daniel. But they interpreted the changes differently. Rebecca believed their mother needed more support. Daniel believed she needed supervised living. Margaret believed both of them needed hobbies. "People forget things," she would say. "I raised 2 children and survived 47 years of marriage. I am allowed to misplace my glasses." Daniel was less amused. He was 52, 4 years older than Rebecca, a financial advisor who lived 30 minutes from their mother in a large house with his wife, Karen. He liked plans, schedules, warranties, insurance policies, and decisions made before they became emergencies. Rebecca taught art at a public high school and lived 10 minutes from Margaret. She was divorced, had one adult son in college, and spent more time at her mother's house than Daniel did. She took Margaret grocery shopping. She drove her to appointments. She changed light bulbs, reset the television, and called every morning before work. Daniel handled taxes, insurance, and larger repairs. For years, the arrangement worked. Then the forgetting became harder to ignore. Margaret missed a doctor's appointment. She left the garden hose running overnight. She gave her credit card number to someone on the phone claiming to be from Medicare. Daniel nearly exploded when he found out. This is not safe. Rebecca agreed that it was concerning. Margaret did not. I canceled the card. Because Rebecca caught it, Daniel said. And now it is fixed. That is not the point. Margaret looked at him over her reading glasses. You always did enjoy points. Rebecca laughed. Daniel did not. That became the pattern. He researched facilities. Rebecca researched in-home support. Margaret refused both. Then Rebecca's school district sent her to Denver for a 5-day arts education conference. Before leaving, she stocked Margaret's refrigerator and taped emergency numbers beside the phone. Daniel promised to check in. "Do not move her into anything while I'm gone," Rebecca joked. Daniel gave her a look. "I'm serious." "So am I." Margaret laughed from the kitchen. "I'm sitting right here, you know." Rebecca hugged her. "I'll be back Sunday. Bring me something expensive. You'll get a refrigerator magnet." I knew having children was a bad investment. That was the last time Rebecca saw her mother in the house, where she had lived for 43 years. Now, standing in an airport, she listened as Daniel told her Margaret had fallen while reaching for a pot in the kitchen. "She wasn't hurt badly," he said. "Bruised hip, no fracture." "And you moved her." The ER social worker agreed she shouldn't be alone. "For one night, maybe. You don't just move someone permanently because they fall." "It is not permanent yet." "And yet, we're evaluating." "Who is we?" "Me, Karen, the care team." Rebecca felt heat climb her neck. "What about Mom?" She agreed. Rebecca went silent. Daniel seized on it. She signed the admission papers herself. Rebecca did not believe him. "Put her on the phone." "She is resting." "Wake her." "No." "Daniel." "Rebecca, she has had a difficult week. You are upset. This conversation can happen tomorrow." "You made a life-changing decision without me." "I made an urgent decision because you were across the country and Mom was unsafe." "I have a phone." "You would have argued." Rebecca froze. There it was. Not inability. Avoidance. "You didn't call because you knew I would disagree." "I didn't call because I knew you would delay." That is the same thing said by someone who thinks he is in charge. Daniel's voice tightened. Someone had to be. Rebecca ended the call. Her flight was delayed another 4 hours. She spent every minute imagining Margaret sitting in an unfamiliar room, wondering why her daughter had not come. By the time Rebecca landed after midnight, Daniel had sent the address. Green Meadow Senior Living sat on 12 landscaped acres near the edge of town. Its website showed bright dining rooms, smiling residents painting flower pots, landscaped walking paths, and phrases like dignified aging and peace of mind. Rebecca hated it before she reached the parking lot. The building was attractive. That almost made things worse. At 1:30 in the morning, the doors were locked. A night receptionist finally let her in after verifying her identity. "You are Mrs. Hale's daughter." "And yes, and she is asleep." "I need to see her." The receptionist hesitated. "Visiting hours begin at 8. I have been on airplanes for 12 hours because my brother moved my mother here without telling me." The woman's expression changed. "I'll call the nurse." 10 minutes later, Rebecca stood outside room 214. A nurse opened the door quietly. Margaret was asleep in a narrow bed beside a window overlooking a dark courtyard. Her white hair was loose around her face. A small bruise darkened her temple. One hand rested on top of the blanket. Rebecca's anger vanished beneath grief. The room contained a dresser, a television, 2 framed family photographs, and a vase of flowers Rebecca recognized from Karen's favorite florist. Someone had already arranged her mother's new life. Rebecca sat beside the bed. Margaret stirred. Her eyes opened. For one frightening second, she looked confused. Then she whispered, "Becca." Rebecca's throat closed. "I'm here." Margaret reached for her. "I knew you'd come." Rebecca took her hand. "Are you okay?" "I'm old." That is not an answer. It is most of one. Rebecca smiled through tears. Margaret squeezed her fingers. Your brother is angry. I'm angrier. Good, it's exhausting being the only one. Rebecca leaned closer. Mom, did you agree to move here? Margaret looked toward the door. The nurse had stepped out. I signed papers. That is not what I asked. Margaret's expression changed. I was tired. Rebecca felt cold. Did you understand what you were signing? I understood enough. Did you want to come here? Margaret closed her eyes. I wanted everyone to stop fighting. Rebecca sat very still. Then Margaret whispered, I thought it was for a few days. Rebecca's grip tightened around her hand. Daniel said it was temporary. He said we would see how I did. Mom, do not start yelling in the middle of the night. I'm not yelling. You are yelling with your eyebrows. Rebecca almost laughed. Then Margaret said, I want my suitcase. What suitcase? The locked one. Rebecca frowned. It's in the attic. What is in it? Margaret looked at her. Things your brother doesn't know about. Rebecca stared. What things? Margaret's eyes closed again. Tomorrow. Within minutes, she was asleep. Rebecca stayed until 3:30. Then she drove to her mother's house. The porch light was on. Daniel's SUV sat in the driveway. Rebecca walked inside without knocking. Her brother stood in the living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes. For several seconds, they looked at each other. Then Rebecca noticed framed photographs had been removed from the wall. What are you doing? Daniel exhaled. Packing some things for Mom. At 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Rebecca looked toward the boxes. One was labeled Donate. Her anger returned instantly. You have a donation box in her living room 5 days after moving her. We need to reduce clutter. She is coming home. Daniel's face hardened. No, she isn't. Rebecca stepped closer. You lied to her. I did not. She thought it was temporary. It was introduced as a trial stay. You told me she agreed to move. She did. She agreed because you made it sound temporary. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Rebecca, she cannot live here alone anymore. Then we arrange help. We tried. No, we discussed it. She resisted. That is not the same as trying. She left the stove on last month. She turned on the wrong burner. She fell. People fall. She has early dementia. Rebecca stopped. What? Daniel looked surprised. You didn't know. No. His surprise became discomfort. The neurologist called me after the evaluation. What evaluation? The one in March. Rebecca's heart began pounding. Mom told me that was for migraines. She didn't want you to worry. And you knew. Yes. For how long? Almost 4 months. Rebecca stared at him. You kept Mom's diagnosis from me. She asked me to. Convenient. It is the truth. You had no problem breaking her wishes when you moved her. Daniel's face flushed. That is different. Because you decided it was. She is declining. So you hide the diagnosis, wait until I leave town, move her into a facility, and start boxing up her house. I handled an emergency. You staged a takeover. Daniel slammed his hand against the back of a chair. You think I wanted this? Rebecca flinched. He lowered his voice. You think I enjoyed sitting in the ER while Mom asked me 3 times why she was there? Rebecca's anger faltered. Daniel continued. She forgot she fell. She accused a nurse of stealing her purse when it was under the bed. Then she asked where Dad was. Rebecca looked away. She has asked that before. Not like this. How was it different? She started crying because she thought he was waiting outside. Rebecca's chest tightened. Daniel's voice broke. I had to tell her Dad has been dead 9 years. Rebecca swallowed. He looked exhausted. She grieved him again from the beginning, Becca. For a moment they were children again, united by fear. Then Rebecca saw the donation box. The moment disappeared. You still should have called me. I know. The admission surprised her. Daniel looked down. I knew you would come home and try to keep everything exactly the way it was. You don't know that. I do. Why? Because you have spent 9 years acting like keeping Mom in this house is the same thing as keeping Dad alive. Rebecca went still. Daniel immediately looked sorry. But he did not take it back. She stepped away from him. Get out. This house is Mom's. And right now, I am asking you to leave it. Rebecca. Go. He grabbed his keys. At the door, he turned. The facility needs a 90-day commitment for the memory care assessment. What? I signed it. You signed what? As medical power of attorney. Rebecca stared. Daniel continued. Mom changed the documents last year. The sentence landed harder than everything else. What documents? Her power of attorney, medical and financial. Rebecca's mouth went dry. She made me primary. Rebecca could barely speak. I was primary. Before. Why did she change it? Daniel looked at her with something like pity. You should ask her. He left. Rebecca did not sleep. At sunrise, she climbed the attic stairs. The attic smelled of dust, cedar, and old summers. Boxes were stacked beneath the rafters. Christmas decorations, Frank's fishing gear, Claire's childhood clothes, a broken lamp Margaret always intended to repair. Rebecca found the suitcase behind a stack of quilts. It was small, brown leather, and older than either child. A brass combination lock secured the latches. She carried it downstairs. On the handle was a luggage tag in Margaret's handwriting. Frank and Margaret Hale, 1972. Rebecca took it to Green Meadow at 8. Margaret was dressed and eating oatmeal in the dining room. When she saw the suitcase, her face changed. You found it. And yes. Rebecca sat. What is inside? Margaret touched the worn leather. My evidence. Rebecca frowned. Evidence of what? That your father and I made more mistakes than you children know. Margaret looked toward the windows. And that Daniel thinks he is protecting me from the wrong thing. She turned the lock. 3 numbers. 47, 12, 9. The years of her marriage, the month Frank proposed, the day Rebecca was born. The latches clicked. Inside were envelopes, bank statements, photographs, a small cassette recorder, property documents, and 2 thick journals tied together with ribbon. Rebecca stared. What is all this? Margaret looked at her daughter. The reason your brother is afraid of losing the house. Rebecca's stomach tightened. I thought he wanted to sell it. He does. Then, why would he be afraid of losing it? Margaret's eyes filled. Because he already did once. Rebecca stared at her mother. What do you mean? Margaret lifted one of the journals. Your father had a gambling problem. Rebecca almost laughed because the sentence was so completely wrong. Dad hated casinos. By the time you remember him clearly, yes. What are you talking about? When you were 11 and Daniel was 15, your father started betting on sports. Rebecca shook her head. No. He was good at hiding it. Dad counted coupons. He counted coupons because for 3 years we had almost no money. Margaret untied the ribbon from the journals. He lost our savings first, then he borrowed against the house, then he borrowed from his brother. Rebecca felt as if someone had moved the walls. That never happened. Margaret's expression was gentle. It happened whether you remember it or not. Rebecca looked at the papers in the suitcase. Mortgage notices. Bank letters. A document stamped default warning. The dates were from more than 30 years earlier. Her hands trembled. We almost lost the house. And yes, why didn't I know? You were a child. So was Daniel. Margaret closed her eyes. And yes. Rebecca looked at her. What does that mean? Her mother took a slow breath. Daniel found out. How? He came home early from baseball practice and heard your father and me arguing. Frank had received a foreclosure warning. Rebecca's stomach turned. He was 15. I know. What did he do? Margaret's eyes filled. He stopped being 15. Rebecca said nothing. He got a job at the grocery store, then another job at a gas station on weekends. He told us he wanted spending money. Rebecca remembered Daniel leaving early on Saturdays. She remembered teasing him for smelling like gasoline. He gave you the money. Not at first, your father would not take it, so Daniel started paying things himself. Groceries, your school fees, the electric bill once. Rebecca covered her mouth. No. Margaret nodded. He was angry all the time back then, do you remember? Rebecca did. She had always remembered Daniel at 16 as impossible. He fought with their father. He stopped playing baseball. He missed her middle school art show. He snapped at everyone. For years, Rebecca had believed he was simply a difficult teenager. He quit baseball because of work. And yes, Rebecca's eyes filled. He loved baseball. I know. What happened to Dad? He finally admitted everything. Your Uncle Paul helped us refinance. Frank went to a support group. He never placed another bet as far as I know. Why did everyone hide this? Margaret looked tired. A shame. Rebecca laughed bitterly. That seems to be our family tradition. Her mother did not argue. Rebecca pulled out an envelope with Daniel's name written across it. What is this? A letter your father wrote to him. Did Daniel see it? No. Why not? Frank was going to give it to him when Daniel graduated college. Then they had another fight. Then time passed. Your father kept saying he would find the right moment. Rebecca stared at her. And then he died. And yes. Why didn't you give it to Daniel? Margaret looked ashamed. Because your father asked me not to unless Daniel ever needed to understand that Frank knew what he had cost him. That sounds like exactly what he has needed for 30 years. I know. Rebecca felt anger rise again. Why does everyone in this family keep deciding when other people are ready for the truth? Margaret flinched. The question landed between them. Rebecca immediately regretted the sharpness. Then she realized she did not regret the truth. Margaret nodded slowly. You are right. Rebecca looked away. Her mother continued. I changed the power of attorney because I was frightened. Rebecca turned back. Of me. No. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you would hear it as rejection. That was correct. Margaret almost smiled. You always were predictable when hurt. Mom. I changed it because you are too willing to give up your life for mine. Rebecca stared. What? After your divorce, you moved 10 minutes away. You stopped dating. You stopped taking the summer teaching program in Europe because you said I might need help. That was my choice. And yes, you make it sound unhealthy to care about you. I am not criticizing the caring. Then what? Margaret reached for her hand. I watched you begin doing what I did after your father's gambling problem. I made myself responsible for preventing every bad thing. If Frank was late, I panicked. If money was low, I worked more. If Daniel was angry, I tried to fix it. If you were sad, I hid the reason. Rebecca's eyes filled. I thought that was love. It was love and fear. The two can live together. Rebecca looked down. Margaret squeezed her fingers. Daniel is good at decisions when decisions are ugly. He certainly thinks so. Margaret smiled faintly. He is also unbearable. Rebecca laughed despite herself. But you are good at making people feel safe, Margaret said. I needed both of you. You didn't act like it. No. Daniel moved you without me. I know. You signed paperwork you didn't fully understand. I understood enough to know I was tired and scared. Do you want to stay here? Margaret looked around the dining room. A woman nearby was arranging sugar packets into neat rows. An older man read the newspaper with a magnifying glass. A caregiver helped someone butter toast. I don't know. Rebecca was surprised. I thought you wanted to go home. I want to be the woman who can go home. Margaret's eyes filled. That may not be the same thing. Rebecca's throat tightened. Mom, I forgot your father was dead. Daniel told me. I forgot again yesterday. Rebecca looked at her. Margaret's voice shook. For 5 minutes I thought he had abandoned me here. Rebecca reached across the table. Her mother took her hand. I am scared, Becca. Rebecca had heard her mother say many things in 48 years. She could not remember hearing those words. I'm scared too. Margaret nodded. Good. Rebecca almost laughed. Good. It means we can stop pretending one of us knows exactly what to do. Rebecca looked at the suitcase. What do you want me to do with Daniel's letter? Give it to him. Are you sure? No. Margaret sighed. But I have spent enough years waiting to be sure. Rebecca left Green Meadow with the letter in her purse. She did not call Daniel immediately. Instead, she went home, showered, and slept for 4 hours. When she woke, there were 9 missed calls. 3 from Daniel. 2 from Green Meadow. 4 from her son, Ethan, who had apparently learned from Karen that a family war was underway. Rebecca called Green Meadow first. Margaret was fine. Then Ethan. Grandma is in a nursing home, he said before Rebecca could say hello. Assisted living. That sounds like a nursing home with marketing. Probably. Uncle Daniel did that without telling you. And yes. Do you want me to come home? Rebecca smiled. Ethan was 21 and 4 hours away at college. No. I can. I know. Mom. I mean it, stay there. He hesitated. Are you okay? Rebecca thought about the suitcase. No. Ethan became quiet. But I will be. That sounds suspiciously healthy. College has ruined you. I love you. I love you too. Rebecca called Daniel last. He answered immediately. How is Mom? You could call her. I did, she hung up on me. Rebecca almost smiled. That means she is fine. Rebecca. I found the suitcase. A silence. What suitcase? The one from the attic. Daniel did not answer. Mom told me about Dad. The silence changed. Rebecca heard his breathing. About the gambling. And yes, you knew. I lived it. Why didn't you ever tell me? Daniel laughed once without humor. Tell my 11-year-old sister that Dad nearly lost the house betting on football. Not then's later. When? I don't know, any time in the last 30 years. Mom wanted it buried. So did you. And yes, at least he admitted it. Rebecca looked at the envelope on her kitchen table. Dad wrote you a letter. Daniel went completely quiet. What? Before you graduated college. That makes no sense. Mom kept it. Daniel's voice sharpened. She kept a letter from Dad for 30 years. And yes, what does it say? I don't know. You didn't read it. It has your name on it. Another pause. Where are you? He asked. At home. I'm coming over. 25 minutes later, Daniel stood in Rebecca's kitchen. He looked older than he had 2 days earlier. Rebecca placed the envelope on the table. Daniel did not touch it. That is his handwriting. And yes, he said. Rebecca poured coffee neither of them wanted. Daniel stared at the envelope for almost a minute. Then he opened it. The paper inside was yellowed at the edges. He began reading silently. Rebecca watched his face. At first nothing changed. Then his jaw tightened. His eyes filled. Halfway through, he stopped. He put the page on the table and covered his mouth. Rebecca had not seen her brother cry since their father's funeral. What does it say? Daniel shook his head. She waited. Finally, he pushed the letter toward her. Read it. Rebecca hesitated. You sure? He nodded. She picked it up. Daniel, if I ever find the courage to give you this, I need you to know I remember exactly what I took from you. You were 15 when you learned your father could not be trusted with money. You were 16 when you quit baseball because you thought your family needed your paycheck more than you needed something you loved. You were 17 when you turned down the summer program in Florida because your mother was afraid to be left alone with me. I was supposed to make you feel safe. Instead, you learned to become the safest person in the room. I am proud of the man you are becoming, but I am afraid some of the things I call responsibility in you are actually fear I put there. You check every lock twice. You save every receipt. You panic when plans change. You think if you are careful enough, nobody you love will ever lose a house, miss a payment, or be surprised by disaster. Son, some disasters cannot be managed. Do not spend your whole life trying to prove otherwise. I am sorry you had to become a man before I became one again. And I am sorry I let everyone praise you for being responsible instead of apologizing for why you had to be. If you are angry with me, you have earned it. If you forgive me, let it be because you want freedom, not because I am your father. Love. Dad. Rebecca lowered the letter. Daniel was crying silently. She did not speak. After a while he said he knew. And yes, I thought he never understood. He did. He never said anything. No. Daniel laughed bitterly. Apparently, none of us says anything until decades later. Rebecca looked at him. Why did you really move, Mom? His face closed slightly. I told you. No, you told me the reasons that sound professional. Daniel looked away. Rebecca continued. Why did you really do it while I was gone? He rubbed his hands together. For once she recognized the gesture, not as impatience but anxiety. When I got to the ER, he said, Mom was wearing Dad's old coat. Rebecca frowned. It was 90 degrees Tuesday. I know. Daniel swallowed. She said Dad told her they were going to the bank. Rebecca's chest tightened. Daniel continued. She kept asking whether the mortgage payment had cleared. Rebecca understood before he said it. She was back there. And yes, in the gambling years. Daniel nodded. She kept saying, "We can't lose the house, Daniel. Don't let him lose the house." Rebecca covered her mouth. Daniel's eyes filled again. I was 15 again. The kitchen was silent. I know that sounds ridiculous. No. I looked at her in that ER, and I thought if I took her back to that house, I would be putting both of us back inside the worst years of our lives. Rebecca sat slowly. So you decided for her. And yes. And for me. And yes. You knew I would stop you. I knew you would ask questions I could not answer while I was panicking. Rebecca stared at her brother. He looked at the letter. Dad was right. About what? I still think if I act fast enough, organize enough, sign the right paper, nobody can lose anything. Rebecca's voice softened. And I think if I stay close enough, help enough, love enough, nobody has to leave. Daniel looked at her. For the first time, neither sibling seemed like the villain in the other's story. They seemed like two children who had grown into different defenses against the same family fear. Rebecca took a breath. You still betrayed me. Daniel nodded. I know. You used Mom's power of attorney to keep me out of the decision. And yes, you let me get on a plane without telling me she had a diagnosis. That was Mom's request. And you agreed because secrecy is easier for you than conflict. Daniel flinched. And yes, Rebecca's eyes filled. I don't know how to forgive that yet. I'm not asking you to. That answer mattered. Then Daniel said, there is something else. Rebecca's stomach dropped. What? I contacted a realtor. She stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. You what? I did not list the house. You contacted a realtor. To get a valuation. Without Mom. She knows. Rebecca stared. She asked me what it was worth after Dad died. We revisited it last year. Why? Because memory care is expensive. Rebecca's anger faltered. How expensive? Daniel named the monthly figure. Rebecca sat back down. It was more than her take-home salary. Insurance. Limited, long-term care coverage helps for a while, not indefinitely. Mom has savings. Enough for maybe 2 years at that level. And the house. Probably $480,000 after costs. Rebecca looked toward the window. So you want to sell it? If she stays in memory care, eventually we may have to. She may not need memory care yet. I know. That surprised her. Daniel continued. The neurologist said early-stage cognitive impairment. The hospital made it look worse because she was dehydrated and disoriented. Rebecca stared at him. You know that. I spoke to him this morning. Then, why the 90-day facility commitment? Because I panicked. There it was. Not a defense. An admission. Rebecca sat back. What happens now? Daniel looked exhausted. We ask Mom. Rebecca laughed softly. That would be new. He nodded. And yes. The next afternoon, Rebecca and Daniel met with Margaret in a private room at Green Meadow. For once, Daniel brought no folder. Rebecca brought no plan. Margaret looked suspicious. Why are you both sitting like a school principal called you in? Daniel smiled faintly. Because we owe you an apology. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Which one of you? Both. Good, continue. Rebecca almost laughed. Daniel went first. He apologized for moving her too quickly, for using his authority instead of discussing the decision, for letting fear turn urgency into control. Margaret listened without interrupting. Then Rebecca apologized. For what? Margaret asked. For assuming taking you home is automatically the loving choice. Her mother's expression changed. Rebecca continued. I want you home because I miss you there. That is about me too. Margaret's eyes filled. Daniel looked at Rebecca. She kept going. I also need to stop acting like I can personally prevent every bad thing that might happen to you. Margaret reached for her hand. That would be exhausting. It is. Now, Daniel said, we need to know what you want. Margaret looked between them. What are my real choices? It was the first truly adult question anyone had asked in the process. Daniel explained. She could remain at Green Meadow temporarily for assessment. She could return home with daytime support, medication management, a fall alert system, and no more driving. She could move to an independent apartment within the same senior community and transition later if necessary. She could stay with Rebecca or Daniel, though both admitted that option had serious drawbacks. Margaret listened. Then she asked questions. How much would home care cost? Who would choose the caregiver? Could she still go to church? Would someone take her to the library? Could she keep her cat? Rebecca froze. Where is Lucy? Daniel closed his eyes. At Corinne's. You moved Mom and kidnapped her cat. Lucy hates me. Lucy hates everyone. Margaret laughed so hard she began coughing. For the first time in days, all three laughed together. Then Margaret became serious. I want to go home. Daniel looked down. Rebecca's heart lifted. Margaret held up a hand. For now. Rebecca waited. I will accept help. Daniel looked up. I will stop driving. Rebecca's eyes widened. Mom. Do not make me repeat it. Margaret continued. I will let someone manage my medication. I will wear the ridiculous button around my neck. And if the doctor says I am no longer safe after a real assessment, we talk again. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay. Margaret looked at Rebecca. You will not move into my spare room. Rebecca opened her mouth. No. I wasn't. You were already picking curtains in your mind. Daniel laughed. Rebecca glared at him. Margaret continued. You will go back to Europe this summer. Rebecca stared. What? The school program. That was years ago. They invited you again. I saw the email when you left your laptop open. Mom. I am old, not ethical. Daniel laughed again. Rebecca tried not to. Margaret squeezed her hand. Go. I can't leave you for 6 weeks. You can. What if? There will always be a what if. Rebecca became quiet. Margaret looked at Daniel. And you. He straightened. You are going to therapy. Daniel blinked. Rebecca burst out laughing. What? Margaret folded her arms. You heard me. I am not. You moved your mother into a nursing home because an ER triggered a memory from 1989. Daniel stared. Margaret leaned back. I may forget where I put the butter, but even I can see that needs attention. Rebecca wiped tears of laughter from her face. Daniel looked betrayed. Whose side are you on? Margaret smiled. Mine. Margaret returned home 9 days later. The homecoming was not cinematic. There was no triumphant music, no dramatic moment at the front door, No sense that the family had defeated anything. There were grab bars in the bathroom, a medication dispenser on the kitchen counter, a small camera at the back door that Margaret had agreed to only after making Rebecca swear it would never face inside the house. There was a fall detection pendant around Margaret's neck that she called the cowbell. And there was Lucy, her orange cat, who ignored everyone for 24 hours to express disapproval about having spent 9 days at Karen and Daniel's house. Margaret sat in her old chair by the window and cried. Rebecca knelt beside her. You okay? Margaret nodded. I thought I would feel like myself the minute I got back. Rebecca's throat tightened. And I still feel like the woman who forgot her husband was dead. Rebecca took her hand. Being home doesn't erase what happened. No. But it means you get to decide what happens next. Margaret looked around the room. That will have to be enough. For a while it was. The family hired a caregiver named Rosa for 4 hours every weekday afternoon. Margaret hated the arrangement for exactly 3 days. On the 4th, Rosa discovered that Margaret had once worked as a school secretary and asked her to help organize a chaotic drawer of medical paperwork. By the end of the week, Margaret had decided Rosa was competent enough to keep. Rosa laughed when Rebecca told her, I have received worse performance reviews. Daniel created a shared calendar. Rebecca resisted making fun of it because it actually helped. Karen took Margaret to church on Sundays. Rebecca handled most doctor appointments. Daniel took over insurance and long-term financial planning, with Margaret present for every conversation. That last part mattered. When Daniel opened his laptop and began explaining projected costs, Margaret stopped him. Are you going to use words designed to make me feel stupid? No. Good, because I can still hit you with my cane. You do not use a cane. I can buy one. Rebecca laughed. Daniel smiled despite himself. The old rhythms of the family returned, but not exactly. Some habits had to die. Rebecca still called every morning, but she stopped driving over whenever Margaret did not answer immediately. She waited 10 minutes, then 15. The first time was torture. When Margaret finally called back, she said, I was in the shower, not abducted. Rebecca sat in her car outside school and cried with relief. That evening, she made an appointment with a therapist. She did not tell Daniel for 2 weeks because she did not want him to feel victorious. When she finally admitted it, he said, good. She narrowed her eyes. That was dangerously close to smug. I am also going. Rebecca stared. To therapy. And yes. Voluntarily. Mom has become very persuasive. Rebecca smiled. Daniel's therapist asked him a question during the 3rd session that made him angry for 2 days. What would happen if you were not the most prepared person in the room? Daniel told her that was not a serious question. She asked it again. He eventually admitted that he believed something terrible would happen. Not metaphorically. Literally. A missed payment. A forgotten appointment. An accident. A foreclosure notice. His father's face when the truth finally came out. His mother crying at the kitchen table. His 15-year-old hands counting $20 bills from the grocery store and trying to decide whether they could cover electricity and Rebecca's field trip fee. For decades, Daniel had called that memory responsibility. Therapy gave it another name. Fear. Rebecca's sessions were not easier. Her therapist asked why she felt guilt whenever someone she loved was uncomfortable. Rebecca said, because if I can help and don't, I'm selfish. Who taught you that? No one. Then where did you learn it? Rebecca thought about Margaret. About the years after Frank's gambling. Her mother taking extra shifts. Her mother smoothing every argument. Her mother hiding bills before Rebecca could see them. Her mother saying, "Everything is fine," with red eyes. Rebecca had learned that love meant absorbing discomfort before it reached someone else. She had copied the lesson without knowing where it came from. The family began telling more truth. Not all at once. Truth is rarely that cooperative. It came in fragments. One Sunday, Daniel admitted to Rebecca that he had resented her childhood. They were sitting on Margaret's back porch, while their mother and Karen argued inside about pie crust. Rebecca looked at him. "My childhood. You got to have one." She felt defensive immediately. "That wasn't my fault." "I know. But you blamed me." "Sometimes." Rebecca looked toward the yard. Daniel continued. "You got art lessons, sleepovers, school trips. Dad came to your things. He came to yours too." Before. Rebecca understood. Before the gambling. Before work. Before Daniel became the child who knew. "I thought you hated me when we were teenagers," she said. "I hated that you didn't know." "That is not the same thing." "It felt like it at 16. Rebecca nodded. After a moment she said, "I resented you too." Daniel looked surprised. "For what?" "Mom and Dad always trusted you with serious things." Daniel almost laughed. "That was your dream. I thought it meant they respected you more." He stared at her. Rebecca continued. "When Dad died, you handled the funeral home and the bank and the insurance. Everyone kept saying, 'Daniel will take care of it.' I was 40 years old and still felt like the little sister who wasn't trusted with the grown-up information." Daniel's expression softened. "I didn't know." "Neither did I until recently." He looked toward the kitchen window. "We spent a lot of years being jealous of each other's damage." Rebecca laughed softly. "That is depressing." "It is efficient, we are Hales." They both laughed. Margaret heard them through the screen door. "What are you two laughing about?" "Your parenting," Daniel called. Margaret appeared in the doorway holding a rolling pin. "Keep talking and I'll demonstrate some of it." For several months Margaret did well. Her memory remained inconsistent, but the structure helped. She still volunteered at the library, though Rosa drove her. She still made soup. She still complained that the medication dispenser spoke to her like an airport. Rebecca began to believe the crisis had passed. Then one morning in November, Margaret disappeared. Rosa arrived at noon and found the front door unlocked. Margaret was gone. Her coat was missing. So was her purse. The car remained in the garage because Daniel had taken the keys months earlier. Rosa called Rebecca first. Rebecca left school without telling anyone where she was going. She called Daniel while driving. The old patterns returned instantly. "Check the church," Daniel said. "I already called." "Library." Rosa called. "Police." "It's on the way." "Use the door camera." "I am." The camera showed Margaret leaving at 9:42 in the morning. She wore Frank's old brown coat. Rebecca's stomach dropped. Daniel saw the image too. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Daniel said, "The bank." Rebecca knew exactly what he meant. The old bank from the gambling years had closed decades earlier, but the building still stood downtown as a law office. Rebecca drove there. She found Margaret 3 blocks away sitting on a bus stop bench. Her mother was crying. Rebecca pulled over illegally and ran. "Mom." Margaret looked up. Relief crossed her face. "Becca's, thank God." Rebecca dropped to her knees. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Where were you going?" Margaret looked around, confused. "I needed to find your father." Rebecca's eyes filled. Why? He took the mortgage money. The sentence broke her. Rebecca sat on the cold pavement beside her mother and cried. Margaret stared at her. Then something in her face cleared. So? Rebecca looked at her. Margaret whispered, "It happened again, didn't it?" Rebecca took her hands. And yes, I forgot. And yes. Margaret closed her eyes. I'm sorry. And no. I scared you. And yes. I'm sorry. Rebecca leaned forward and held her. Daniel arrived 10 minutes later. He stopped several feet away. Margaret looked at him over Rebecca's shoulder. Don't say I told you so. Daniel's face crumpled. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. Maybe a little. Margaret laughed weakly. Then Daniel knelt and hugged both women. That night, no one pretended the home arrangement was still safe. Margaret did not argue. That frightened Rebecca more than if she had. They sat at the kitchen table. Rosa had gone home. Karen made tea. Daniel explained options. This time his voice shook. Margaret listened. Then she said, Green Meadow has apartments before memory care, yes. And yes. Can Lucy come? And yes. Can I take my dining table? It may be too big. Margaret looked offended. Then I am not going. Rebecca laughed through tears. Daniel smiled. We can measure. Margaret nodded. Measure first, ruin my life second. They all laughed. Then Margaret looked at Rebecca. Do not cancel Europe. Rebecca's smile faded. That is not important right now. It is exactly important right now. Mom, your life cannot become smaller every time mine does. Rebecca looked down. Margaret touched her hand. You think staying proves love. Rebecca's eyes filled. It does sometimes. And yes. Margaret nodded. And sometimes going does. Rebecca cried. The next month, Margaret moved into a one-bedroom apartment at Green Meadows Independent Living Wing. This time she chose the curtains. This time she toured 3 available units. This time she signed each page slowly and asked questions. This time, Rebecca and Daniel stood beside her instead of in front of her. They moved the dining table. It barely fit. Margaret looked delighted. I told you. Daniel shook his head. This table is a fire code violation. So was your father's cooking. Rebecca laughed. Lucy hid under the bed for 2 days. Then she claimed the sunny window, as if she had negotiated the lease herself. The house remained empty. That created the next difficult decision. For 3 months, Rebecca could not discuss selling it. She drove there twice a week. She watered plants that no longer needed to be kept. She dusted furniture. She sat on the stairs. She opened closets. The house became a museum to people who were still alive and people who were not. Daniel gave her time. That was new. He did not send property valuations. He did not call a realtor. He waited. Eventually, Rebecca brought it up herself. They were having lunch near Green Meadow. I think we should sell the house. Daniel put down his fork. Are you sure? Rebecca smiled sadly. No. He nodded. That is apparently the family standard now. She laughed. I talked to Mom. What did she say? She said houses are terrible at visiting nursing homes. Daniel smiled. That sounds like her. She wants the money protected for her care. Whatever is left later gets divided according to the will. Okay. Rebecca looked at him. You are not going to show me a spreadsheet. I have one. Of course you do. I can wait. That simple sentence moved her more than it should have. Thank you. The house sold in April. The buyer was a young couple with a 4-year-old daughter and another baby on the way. Rebecca met them during the final walkthrough. The little girl ran directly to the backyard and stood under the maple tree. Is this ours? She asked her father. He smiled. It will be. Rebecca's eyes filled. For weeks she had imagined strangers erasing her family. In that moment she understood they were not buying memories. They were buying walls, windows, a roof, and a place to make memories of their own. Before closing, Rebecca removed the pencil marks from the hallway doorframe by cutting out the narrow piece of trim. Daniel stared at her. You cut the house. And yes. Legally, I think that belonged to the buyer. I left them a bottle of wine. That is not how property law works. Arrest me. He laughed. They carried the piece of trim to Margaret's apartment. When she saw it, she cried. Daniel mounted it beside her bedroom door. The marks showed Rebecca at 5, 7, 9, 11. Daniel at 9, 11, 13, 15. Next to Daniel's last childhood mark, Frank had written, 6 feet if he stopped slouching. Daniel touched the handwriting. For a moment, he looked 15 again. Margaret stood beside him. I should have told you he wrote that letter. Daniel nodded. And yes. She flinched. He turned toward her. I forgive you. Margaret's eyes filled. But I wish you had told me. I know. I spent years thinking he never understood what happened to me. I know. You let me carry that. Tears rolled down Margaret's face. I did. Daniel swallowed. I love you. I love you too. They hugged. Rebecca watched from the doorway. The reconciliation did not look like forgetting. It looked like truth being allowed to remain even after forgiveness entered the room. That summer, Rebecca went to Europe. 6 weeks. Italy and France with 20 teachers from across the state studying museum education and community art programs. The morning she left, she nearly canceled. Margaret had become more confused the night before. She called Rebecca at 10:30 and asked whether Frank had fed the dog. They had not owned a dog in 20 years. Rebecca lay awake until 2. At 4:30, Daniel picked her up for the airport. She stood in the driveway with her suitcase. I can't go. Daniel did not argue. That is your choice. I mean it. I know. What if she gets worse? She might. What if she needs me? She will. Rebecca stared at him. This is not helping. Daniel leaned against the car. What would Mom say? She would tell me to go. What do you want? Rebecca hated the question. She looked down at her suitcase. I want to go. Daniel nodded. Then go. What if I regret it? You might. Can you please say one comforting thing? Daniel smiled. I have her calendar, medication list, doctors, emergency contacts, facility care plan, and backup plan in 3 places. Rebecca laughed through tears. That is comforting only because you are deeply damaged. I know. She hugged him. Call me if anything changes. I will. Not after you solve it. Daniel's expression changed. Before. Promise. I promise. He kept the promise. 3 weeks into Rebecca's trip, Margaret became disoriented and wandered into another resident's apartment at 2 in the morning. Daniel called Rebecca before speaking to the facility director. He did not have a plan yet. That was harder for him than Rebecca understood. Are you okay? She asked. No. Is Mom safe? And yes. What happens next? I don't know. Rebecca stood on a hotel balcony in Florence, listening to bells from a nearby church. For the first time in their lives, Daniel said those words without shame. I don't know either, she said. They talked for 30 minutes. Then they called Margaret together. She sounded tired but cheerful. I apparently invaded Mrs. Henderson's apartment. So we heard, Rebecca said. She has nicer curtains than I do. Daniel laughed. Margaret continued. Do not come home, Becca. I didn't say I was. You were thinking it loudly. Rebecca smiled. I love you. I love you too. Go look at something old and expensive. Rebecca finished the trip. When she returned, Margaret transitioned into Green Meadows Memory Support Wing. The move hurt, but it did not feel like betrayal. That difference mattered. Margaret chose which furniture came. Daniel explained finances. Rebecca hung family photographs. Karen organized clothes. Ethan came home from college and mounted the old height mark trim beside the door. Margaret touched it. Did that come from the house? Yes, Rebecca said. Margaret smiled. Your father hated when you two drew on walls. Daniel laughed. He drew half of those marks. Your father was a hypocrite. Some days Margaret knew exactly where she was. Some days she packed a bag because she thought she needed to pick Rebecca up from elementary school. Some days she called Daniel by Frank's name. The first time, Daniel left the room and cried in the hallway. Rebecca followed. He leaned against the wall. I hate this. I know. I spent my whole life trying to keep her safe, and I can't protect her from her own brain. Rebecca took his hand. Dad told you some disasters cannot be managed. Daniel closed his eyes. I know. That doesn't make it hurt less. No. They stood there together. Years earlier, Rebecca would have tried to fix his pain. Daniel would have hidden it. Now neither did. They simply stayed. Margaret lived at Green Meadow for 4 more years. Her decline was uneven. Memory disappeared in strange order. She forgot neighbors before recipes. She forgot the name of the school where she worked, but remembered every lyric to songs from 1965. She forgot Daniel's job. Then Rebecca's divorce. Then sometimes Rebecca's name. But emotion stayed longer than facts. When Rebecca entered the room, Margaret often smiled even when she could not identify her. You're one of mine, she would say. Yes, Rebecca answered. I knew it. Daniel learned to accept that too. One afternoon, Margaret looked at him carefully. You worry too much. Daniel smiled. So I've been told. You always did. He froze. For a moment, her eyes were clear. You were such a serious boy, she said. Daniel sat beside her. Mom, you thought you had to save us. His eyes filled. Margaret touched his cheek. You didn't. Daniel swallowed. What? You didn't have to save us. She smiled faintly. We should have saved you from needing to try. Daniel began crying. Rebecca, standing near the window, covered her mouth. Margaret looked at her. And you? Rebecca stepped closer. You always thought everybody's sadness was homework. Rebecca laughed through tears. That sounds like me. Margaret nodded. Stop doing homework that wasn't assigned. Then she looked toward the television. Within seconds, the clarity was gone. Is Jeopardy on? She asked. Daniel laughed and cried at the same time. Those few sentences became a gift neither sibling expected. Margaret died peacefully at 83. Rebecca was holding one hand. Daniel held the other. Karen and Ethan were nearby. There was no dramatic final speech. No sudden return of memory. Margaret's breathing simply slowed. Then stopped. Rebecca cried against the blanket. Daniel stood still for a long time. Then he whispered, "I couldn't fix this." Rebecca looked at him. "No." He nodded. And she was still okay. Rebecca understood what he meant. Not okay as in painless. Not okay as in fair. Okay as in loved. Okay as in not alone. Okay as in a life could end without anyone having failed. Yes, Rebecca whispered, she was. After the funeral, the family gathered at Rebecca's house. The old suitcase sat on the dining room table. Margaret had instructed in her will that Rebecca and Daniel open the final envelope inside together. Daniel looked at it. "Do you think she planned this for dramatic effect?" "Absolutely." She hated secrets by the end. She also loved envelopes. They smiled. Rebecca opened it. Inside was one letter addressed to both children. Rebecca read aloud. "My stubborn children. If you are reading this, I am gone." Which means Daniel is probably trying to organize something, and Rebecca is probably trying to make everyone feel better about it. "Stop. Both of you. I spent too much of my life believing a good family was one where nobody was frightened, nobody was angry, nobody made mistakes, and nobody knew the embarrassing parts. That was wrong. Your father's gambling did not nearly destroy us because he made a terrible mistake. Families survive terrible mistakes every day. What nearly destroyed us was shame. We hid the truth from Rebecca. We let Daniel carry too much. We pretended the crisis had disappeared because the mortgage became current. Then we carried those habits into the next 30 years. I hid my diagnosis. Daniel hid his fear inside plans. Rebecca hid her fear inside caregiving. And when my memory began failing, all three of us tried to protect one another by controlling the truth. Please do something better with what is left. Daniel being prepared is a gift, it is not a guarantee. Rebecca being caring is a gift, it is not a debt you owe everyone forever. And both of you, stop measuring love by how much you can prevent. Sometimes love is prevention. Sometimes love is repair. Sometimes love is staying. Sometimes love is letting someone go. The house was never the family. The suitcase was never the truth. You were. Tell each other things while you still have time to argue about them. Love. Mom. Rebecca stopped reading. Daniel wiped his face. Ethan was crying openly. Karen squeezed Daniel's shoulder. After a while, Daniel said, "She called me stubborn from beyond the grave." Rebecca laughed through tears. That is commitment. They kept the suitcase. Not in an attic. Not locked. It sat for years on a shelf in Rebecca's living room. Inside were copies of the letters, photographs, the old mortgage notices, and Margaret's journals. When Ethan eventually married and had a daughter, Rebecca told him the family story before the little girl was old enough to understand it. Not the simplified version. The real one. Frank had been a loving father who developed a gambling problem and nearly lost the family home. Margaret had been a loving mother who hid too much because she was ashamed and afraid. Daniel had been a responsible son who carried burdens no child should have carried and later tried to control danger, because danger had once arrived without warning. Rebecca had been a devoted daughter who sometimes confused love with making herself indispensable. Nobody was reduced to their worst decision. Nobody was protected from the truth either. Years later, Rebecca and Daniel drove past the old house together after visiting a cemetery on their father's birthday. The young couple who bought it had painted the front door green. A basketball hoop stood beside the driveway. Children's bicycles lay on the grass. Daniel slowed the car. Rebecca looked at the maple tree. It looks smaller. We got bigger. She smiled. They sat in silence for a moment. Do you regret selling it? Daniel asked. Rebecca thought. Sometimes. Me too. She looked at him. I used to think keeping it would prove we didn't lose anything. Daniel nodded. And I thought selling it quickly would prove losing things couldn't hurt me. That worked well. Excellent strategy. They laughed. A little girl ran across the front yard, chasing a dog. Rebecca watched her. Mom was right. Daniel glanced over. About what? The house was never the family. He nodded. No. Rebecca looked at her brother. For years, she had believed the greatest betrayal was what he did during those 5 days she was away in Denver. He moved their mother. He kept a diagnosis from her. He signed papers without including her. Those things were real. They still mattered. Forgiveness had not rewritten them into good decisions. But time had shown Rebecca something she could not see in the airport that night. Daniel had not acted because he loved their mother more. He had not acted because Rebecca mattered less. He acted because an old, terrified boy inside him still believed a house could disappear if he failed to make the right decision quickly enough. And Rebecca's anger had contained its own old belief that if she were present enough, useful enough, and close enough, nobody she loved would have to leave a place she could still call home. Their mother's illness broke both illusions. They could not save memory. They could not stop aging. They could not preserve every room, every role, every version of the people they loved. What they could do was tell the truth before fear turned it into control. They could apologize without demanding forgiveness. They could listen without treating uncertainty as failure. They could let each other carry only what belonged to them. Daniel drove away from the old house. Rebecca did not look back until they reached the corner. When she did, she saw the green door, the bicycles, the maple tree, and sunlight across the upstairs windows. Then the house disappeared behind them. This time, neither sibling tried to stop it. They kept driving. Together. A year after Margaret's death, Rebecca received a postcard from Florence. It came from one of the teachers she had met during the summer program, a woman named Camille who had become a close friend. On the front was a photograph of the museum courtyard where Rebecca had once stood debating whether she should fly home early. On the back, Camille had written, "You were allowed to be there." Rebecca sat at her kitchen table, holding the card for a long time. That sentence would have sounded selfish to the woman she had been years earlier. Now it sounded like permission she no longer needed but still appreciated. She placed the postcard inside the old suitcase. A week later, Daniel came over for dinner. He had changed too, though not in ways strangers would immediately notice. He still arrived 10 minutes early. He still checked the weather before leaving home. He still carried jumper cables, bottled water, 2 flashlights, and a first aid kit in his car. But when Rebecca burned the roast because she forgot the timer, Daniel did not take over the kitchen. He opened a bottle of wine and said, "Pizza." Rebecca stared at him. "Who are you?" "Therapy is expensive. I'm trying to get my money's worth." They ordered pizza. After dinner, Ethan arrived with his little daughter, Margaret Rose, named partly for the grandmother she would never know. The child was 3 and deeply interested in opening anything with a latch. She found the brown suitcase. "What's this?" Rebecca looked at Daniel. He smiled. "Family trouble." Rebecca laughed. "That is not how we are introducing it." Margaret Rose tried the brass lock. "It doesn't lock anymore," Rebecca said. "Why?" Rebecca crouched beside her. because we decided the things inside shouldn't have to hide. The child accepted this without understanding and began looking through photographs. She held up one of Frank and Margaret dancing at a wedding in 1972. Who are they? Rebecca smiled. Your family. The little girl looked at another photograph of teenage Daniel in a baseball uniform. Who's this? Daniel leaned over. That handsome athlete is your great uncle. Rebecca snorted. You quit baseball before anyone could confirm that description. Daniel threw a napkin at her. Margaret Rose laughed. The room filled with ordinary noise. And Rebecca understood something her mother had spent a lifetime learning too late. A healthy family was not one with no secrets, because nobody had ever done anything shameful. It was not one where every decision was perfect. It was not even one where betrayal never happened. A healthy family was one where the truth could eventually be spoken without requiring somebody to disappear. Where a mistake could be named without becoming a permanent identity. Where love did not mean controlling another person's choices. Where forgiveness did not require pretending the wound had never existed. Rebecca watched Daniel help his grandniece return the photographs to the suitcase. Then he left the lid open. That small detail made her smile. For decades, the Hales had locked away the parts of their story they thought might damage the family. In the end, the locked parts had done far more damage than the truth ever could. So the suitcase stayed open. And so did they.